5 stakes races at Churchill Downs on a Saturday? That sounds like a recipe for capping the card. Let's get to it on NYRA Bets. Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, and welcome to another episode of Capping the Card. Now, before we get to this episode focused on Churchill Downs on Saturday, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe. Subscribing is entirely free of cost and just notifies you when new videos drop on the NYRA Bets YouTube channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, and so much more. We got you covered beyond Saratoga, like I told you, for the lead up to the Breeders' Cup and beyond, already getting stuff ready for the 2026 Road to the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks. Well, like I said, this Saturday we have a lot of great racing. We got some wonderful races north of the border in Woodbine. We have some nice races down here in New York at Belmont at the Big A, but the focus on capping the card this week is going to be the 11 race card at Churchill Downs on Saturday, highlighted by, of course, the Pocahontas and the Iroquois Stakes, which are your first official Kentucky Derby prep point races. Now, if you have never tuned into Capping the Card before, first, welcome. Second, the premise is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go through all 11 races on Saturday's Churchill Downs card. I'm going to give you my top pick in each race. That should be pretty self-explanatory. I'm also going to give you my top value play. A lot of times that's a horse that usually is 6-1 or higher that I think is really worth considering using in your horizontal sequences, who I think is a legitimate win threat. Other times it's a horse who might be a pretty big price, who I think might just simply be able to outrun their odds and enrich an exacta trifecta sort of a wager. So I'll try to call out those distinctions as I see it. But listen, the only way to get through all 11 is to start with the first one. So let's dive in and get into race number 1, which is a $50,000 maiden claimer for 2-year-olds going 6.5 furlongs on dirt. All the races on Saturday are on the main track. And going to start things off a little bit chalky with a top pick, and that is the number 1, Misinformation. You know, I looked at a couple of different choices here, looked at a horse like the number 3, Perfect Audible at 6-1 for Steve Asmussen, getting the blinkers on, switching over to dirt for the first time. Looked a little bit at the number 5, Herb's Bolt, 4-1 for Chris Hartman. That horse would really need to improve after a very poor first out effort, admittedly against maiden special weight competition. Ultimately, though, it was pretty hard to get around Misinformation, who ran pretty well in debut at Ellis Park and, was placed 4th via disqualification, but finished, across the line 5th that day, but by only 2.5 lengths. And, took a little bit of a step back when the horse stretched out to a mile at Ellis Park. Remember, that's that unique configuration, very similar to what you have at Saratoga with the Wilson shoot. But now we're cutting back to 6.5 furlongs. I like that. This is a horse that took a little bit of money in debut, and really the board got super wonky next time out. I mean, the horse didn't run that bad in debut, just kind of was maybe a little one-paced, but I still think is a pretty nice horse. And now you're getting the class relief, and I think that's really critical here. Cassie's very good with the maiden special weight to maiden claiming class drop. Jose Ortiz up on the mount. Those two have been winning at a pretty strong percentage, 23% of the time, positive ROI overall for the year. So I just think this one with a 53, 57, some professional efforts. Last time wasn't great, but I think you can chalk a lot of that up to a mile just not being this horse's distance. I think you get back to 6.5. That's where this horse is going to run better. So I just think Misinformation makes a lot of sense at 5-2. One concern certainly is the inside rail. You know 2 ways around it. You do worry about a horse breaking from there, especially one that doesn't have elite speed. But still, I think the class drop is going to really help this one after facing significantly better competition in the first 2 starts. Now, a horse that I am a little bit interested in, because this, while I really like Misinformation, if you're playing the early pick 5, it's certainly not a single. That's for sure. A horse that I think is interesting is Full Mean. And that's the number 4 horse for Rohan Crichton with Julian Leparoux aboard. This is an interesting horse. $80,000 purchase, sired by Spun to Run. And, if you go and look under the mare, interesting Kylie Briley. If you look under Kylie Briley, a lot of, not too much there, only a couple of starters, but the full sibling ran second in debut at Delaware over a wet track. then stepped up and ran second next time out, going 7 furlongs at Parks, and then won third time out at Parks. So there's at least a little bit of precocity there in terms of a horse that ran well right out of the gate. Didn't win right out of the gate, but ran well right out of the gate. And like I said, a full sibling. So I think that's promising to see. You also have some really nice 5 furlong workouts, which is something that I always like to take into consideration, especially for those 2-year-old debut runners, that you have the foundation. I like the 47-1 gate work back on August 9th. You have a 1:01 bullet 5 furlong. You have a 59-2 bullet gate work. I like that a lot. So this is a horse that clearly doesn't seem to have any issues getting out of the gate, has decent early speed, 8-1. Crichton's very, very good with first-time starters. And so this is a trainer that can hit at a pretty high percentage and can hit at big prices. Debuting at a maiden claiming 50. But listen, the horse only costs 80. So if, the horse wins and gets claimed, yeah, you're breaking even. Maybe you're taking on a little bit of cost, but still not that bad. So I think, decent placement for a horse this price and with this sort of a pedigree. And I just think at 8-1 feels like a pretty live runner in this particular race. Well, let's go to race number 2 on the card, which is a $20,000 claimer. And this one is going 6 furlongs on the main track. And going to go to a horse, I'm not enthralled with some of the top choices here. A horse like Big Pop for Robertino Diodoro, making the first start after coming over from the West Coast, had been with Mark Glatt. Now is, Del Mar Santa Anita now is making the first start in Kentucky. I don't mind West Coast horses coming east, particularly on the main track. On the turf, it's something different. Still, I don't love it in this particular spot. This is a horse that wasn't able to get it done against claiming competition out west. And generally speaking, the fields are going to be a little bit tougher here. So I'm a little skeptical of that horse at 7-2. And then Curlin's Magic for Steve Asmussen. Listen, this one might very well beat me, 1 against allowance competition, 2 back. But, you look at what this horse has done at Churchill, 0-2, and, ran against claiming 30, ran against claiming 50 here and wasn't able to get the job done. Now this is for a lower tag, claiming 20. Eric Asmussen up on the mount, but at 3-1, again, not a horse that I'm enthralled with as an overall top selection. Where am I going to go as a result? Well, I was really deciding between 2 horses. I really do like the number 6, Wonder of You, for Greg Foley with Tyler Gaffleona, but I think that one's pretty serious. One of claiming 50 N2L, 2 back, and then just, wasn't quite good enough against Allowance Company last time out, but I think is going to really fit at this claiming level. So Wonder of You is a horse I absolutely would encourage you to think about playing if you're playing that early pick 5. My ultimate top choice, though, was Commanded. Very similar profile in terms of a horse by Tom Amos. Jose Ortiz up on the mount. And why do I like this one? Well, similar profile. Like I said, one a claiming 40 N2L 3 back, one a claiming 30 2 back, and then stepped up against Allowance Company. Wasn't quite good enough. And didn't have the best trip necessarily that day. Floated out a little bit at the start and gave up a little bit of ground. But now dropping back against claiming 20 competition should be more than competitive here. I think 5-1 is a very generous price on the morning line. So that's going to ultimately be my top choice. I think getting back into claiming competition really fits this horse well. I mean, you look at what this horse has done since breaking its maiden against maiden claiming 30, goes claiming 35, finishes 4th, claiming 50, finishes 3rd, claiming 40 wins, claiming 30 wins, goes against starter allowance 50, loses. Now you're claiming 20. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for this horse. Now, a horse that I'm going to give out at a little bit of a price and maybe is more of an underneath play, but I think may have a shot depending on how much you can spread in this particular race, is the number 4 St. Albans Raid. 10-1 on the morning line for Matt Shire with Adam Pesquisa aboard. And this is a horse coming off 2 straight wins and a horse maybe that's finally figured things out and finally figured out how to win. The horse broke its maiden finally at Ellis Park going 5.5 furlongs and a maiden claiming 10. Then immediately stepped up and faced winners in a claiming 16 N2L, took him gate to wire. Now, why I say that is that maiden claiming victory was from off the pace. So the horse has a couple of speeds here. Doesn't need to win up front or off the pace. Pesquisa rode this horse last time out. I think this one at 10-1 is at least worth another look. The speed figure last time out in 59 is certainly competitive in this spot. And again, maybe this is a horse that just took a while for the light bulb to come on, and you're finally starting to see this horse kind of put it all together. Once horses learn how to win, they tend to like to win a lot. So St. Albans rate at 10-1, definitely one that I would take a second look at, and I would be including on my early pick 5 tickets. Let's go to race number 3 on the card, which is a $50,000 claimer for 3-year-old nut fillies and mares going 7 furlongs over the main track. And I landed on a horse that I've liked for a while, and I was wondering actually where she was. And that's the number 4, Atara, who I got to see this summer up at Saratoga. I remember this horse when she debuted against Velvet Vortex and Velvet Devil. I remember that race because it was on the undercard of a pretty big day at Fairgrounds. And I remember the dueling Velvets, Velvet Vortex, Velvet Devil. And I remember Atara ran third that day. And I really liked her next time out when she went off as the favorite. And she finished second that day, but she earned a 72 Beyer speed figure. Interestingly enough, Will Walden switches her to the turf at Keeneland, and she wires the field and wins on grass. He keeps her on grass up at Saratoga against $100,000 optional claiming company. And listen, she was no match for that. Now Walden drops her into a $50,000 claimer. And this feels like a good spot for her, and this feels like she could really tower over this field. Tyler Gaffleone up on the mount. And it's important to remember that while she broke her maiden on the turf, her best speed figure of 72 was on the dirt at Fairgrounds going 6 furlongs. So I think that going back to 7 furlongs is actually a really good spot for her. And I know she got a mile and a 16th at Keeneland and can do the 2 turns. But like I said, I think she's maybe at her best sprinting on the dirt, going 7 furlongs on the dirt. So expect Gaffleone to really get her out aggressively out of the gate. But Atara at 3-1 is a horse, like I said, I've always liked a little bit. She was a little bit of a hefty price tag, $450,000 for a Bolt Doro filly. And now you're seeing her in a claiming 50. You know, she's won a little bit of money already, but still, it's going to be a loss if somebody claims her out of this race. Still, this is one who, on her best day, is going to be able to fire, I think, a pretty big race. And again, when you're looking at these sorts of conditions of N2L, I often get drawn to horses that have had the least number of chances and the least number of bites at the apple. And the reality is she's only had 2 bites at the apple on dirt against very solid competition at Fairgrounds. And I just think she's worth absolutely taking into consideration using in that pick 5. You know, our pretty kitty for Safi with Irad up, you know, very good horse coming out of Kentucky Downs. I'm always a little wary about that in terms of that Kentucky Downs success translating right away in terms of running back quickly. You have a horse like Volatile Market for Steve Asmussen with Jose Ortiz aboard. That's another one really taking a bit of a class drop, but has not shown much since breaking its maiden against maiden 50 competition. So, like I said, I landed on Atara as my top choice. Now, a horse that I think is a little bit interesting, and we talk about not having a lot of bites at the apple, is the number 7 Split Success, 10-1 for Dan Cowens, Edgar Morales up. This is a horse that's only had 3 career starts, and 1 was on the turf. 1 was in debut last year as a 2-year-old, and a horse didn't do a lot of running that day. But that was also a race at Churchill Downs in September 26 that produced 3 next out winners. Bookham won that race, and that horse has gone on to win 3 races overall. Flashware came out of that race, actually, and also was a 3-time winner. And then Kayana came out of that race as well and became a next out winner and ran in a stakes race a couple of races later. So that was a very productive restricted maiden special weight race, but then goes to the bench until June 2025, returns on the turf, and then goes and was in Joe Sharp's barn this whole time, then gets dropped down to a maiden claiming 30 and wins. Now Cowens claims the horse for 30 and moves the horse up to a claiming 50. I just think this horse, that 69 Beyer speed figure last time out, I think can get built upon. This horse is 3rd back in the form cycle, and Cowens is pretty good first off the claim. And the nice part is that maiden claiming race has actually already produced a next out winner, Truth or Consequences, who went on to win a maiden special weight race actually at Horseshoe Indy, and then actually ran a pretty decent 4th against Allowance Company at Horseshoe Indy. So it was nice to see that race come back with, you know, the 2nd place finisher come back, win next time out against Maiden Special Weight Company, and then run well against winners. And this one was much the best over Truth or Consequences. So split success at 10-1. I didn't love any of the other prices in this race, and split success, probably a horse I'd consider more of an underneath play, but one I would absolutely take a look at in your exactas and your trifectas. All right, well, let's go to race number 4 on the card, which is a $30,000 claimer for 3-year-olds and up, going a mile, going out of the chute here. I always think of my good friend Travis Stone because it's never easy to call those races coming out of the chute, but they're coming out of the chute. And where did I land? I landed on a little bit of a different choice, which is number 4, 40 Love for trainer Peter Urton. The blinkers are coming on this Son of Win, Win, Win. Interesting horse. Just an interesting horse. Won a maiden claiming 50, then ran some decent races against Allowance Company at Churchill Downs. Last time out was in a claiming 50 and just did not run well at all. But was also breaking from the inside rail and was kind of in chase mode the whole time. And I'm willing to always forgive horses coming out of that inside rail position. And so this is a horse that, again, won at a maiden claiming 50. Now we're in a claiming 30. I like that. This horse does its best work up front. Had a little bit of trouble getting away, I think, in good order last time. And so Urton puts the blinkers on for this horse. That should just infuse a little bit more speed. Blinkers on is an incredibly plus move for Urton. 36% first-time blinkers, 38% blinkers on in general over the last year. So when he puts this sort of an equipment move on, it's usually for a reason, and there's usually good results. Jose Ortiz up on the mount here. I think Jose is going to have a nice start to the day. I think Irad might have a better finish. But I like 40 Love quite a bit here at 9-2. I think a very good price in this particular race. Now, where did I go for my price? Well, I looked at a couple of different choices. I was trying to make a case for a bigger price than this one, but I landed on the number 7 Army Hero at 6-1. Not a huge price, admittedly, but a horse that I just thought fit in this particular spot. And you look at what this horse did 2 back against maiden or against claiming 30, had a really tough trip that day. So I'm willing to forgive that effort. You look at what this horse has done outside of that, pretty solid. 4th place against claiming 50 competition, and then against claiming 20, finished second and broke its maiden against maiden claiming 20. So I think we're at the right level for this horse. We're cutting back a little bit to 7 furlongs from a mile last, or I should say we're staying at a mile from last time, which I actually think is, I actually like that because the horse broke its maiden in a 1-turn mile at Churchill Downs. So Abel Cedillo up on the mount. This one has had a kind of a rotating cast of characters up on the mount, but it's a horse that also gets claimed regularly. And that's something you tend to like to see out of these horses. Again, if you look at that race 2 back and draw a line through it, the other 3 races, 71, 75, 71, very competitive with where everybody else is in this field right now. So I think Army Hero at 6-1, certainly an interesting price. And definitely a horse that I would really take a look at as a top choice, potentially, if you're trying to get a little bit more of a price over 40 Love. I did take a long look at the number 3 Brilliant Man at 12-1 for Aaron Shorter. Very low percentage trainer. You're probably going to get a price. This one coming off a little bit of a layoff. I think this horse might be the one to focus on next time out, but I do like Brilliant Man a little bit at 12-1. Well, let's go to race number 5 on the card. Now we're really getting into some of the good stuff. And this is a $120,000 maiden special weight race for 2-year-old fillies as I knock my stand over. But this is going 6 furlongs on the dirt. And we're going to look at the number 11 Frolicking. This is going to be my top choice here. And part of the reason for that is the number 2 Lit Ship for Joe Sharp. I have a hard time thinking Lit Ship is going to run. Why is that? Because Lit Ship just ran on Wednesday. That's right. Lit Ship ran on Wednesday at Kentucky Downs on the turf. So I have a hard time thinking the horse is going to turn around, run on the dirt at Churchill Downs on Saturday. Maybe I'm wrong. He was going to be your 2-1 top, or she was going to be your 2-1 top choice. Frolicking, I like Frolicking more anyway. And I think Frolicking at 11-1 for the number 11 horse, 3-1 for Brad Cox. Irad Ortiz Jr. up on the mount. Listen, this is a horse that is the half sibling to Second ID, who won in debut, won next time out, and then won third time out as well. 3 for 4 winning. Very precocious horse early on in its career. Even Run Judy Run, who was not a particularly precocious horse, still ran well second time out against much lesser competition, also sired by Comtheros. Now we get Not This Time. Well, Not This Time. And this is a prime example of a mare being moved up. Because you look at Cowboy Take Me Away, who the mare is. You look at who her first, she gets bred to McLean's music. Then she gets bred to Contheros. You get a little bit of a runner there with Second ID. You get a two-time winner with Contheros. And all of a sudden, or with Run Judy Run, and all of a sudden now we get to Not This Time. And who's an extremely precocious first outsider. 18% with 2-year-old first-time starters. You get Irad Ortiz Jr. up. This horse is firing off bullet works. 48-1. You like to see that. I like the 5 furlong gate work last time out. Stone Street bred and owned. I just think this one makes a lot of sense. At 3-1 is a short price, but I think Irad's going to have this one in the winner's circle. There are a couple of other interesting horses in this race. The number 3, Not a Lady, is a horse that I do really like actually quite a bit. And this was a horse that was really interesting to me. The half sibling to It's a Miracle, who ran second in debut to Illuminaire and then won next time out and earned a 99 buyer speed figure. This one has some precocity, $775,000. Keith Asmussen up on the mount for his dad. I don't necessarily love that in this particular spot. But that's a horse at 12-1 that might take a little bit of money in terms of the number 3, Not a Lady. Ultimately, where did I go for my value play? I went to the number 10, Baraka, for trainer Brendan Walsh with Tyler Gaffleone in the irons. I like this one for a few different reasons. First, sired by Oscar Performance. I always love Oscar Performance. The other thing is the dam is far better when you dig into her pedigree and her foals first time out. And it's a little deceiving. Her top foal is Power Broker, the former Bob Baffert horse, who won the Indiana Derby years ago. The horse took 4 starts to break its maiden, but, very important, first time on the dirt, won in a grade 1. Okay, so first time on the dirt, wins. You look at Jasper the Great, nice Japanese horse, actually, came over for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile a few years ago. Won in debut over in Japan on the dirt. Okay. You look at a horse, Fierce Boots, sired by Tiz Now. Debuted on the turf, second race, first time on the dirt, wins. All right. Now you look at a horse like Winning Streak, never got on the dirt. You look at a horse like Fast Retailing, broke its maiden on the dirt, 4th start. But then Smart Shopping, another one, broke its maiden in debut at Churchill Downs on the dirt. So there's a lot more first out dirt success than you might expect from this mare. And you have Oscar Performance, who I've always liked, Brendan Walsh, Tyler Gaffleone. I always am a sucker for those combinations. This was a $500,000 purchase. I just think this horse at 8-1, really interesting value in this race. Again, when you dig into that female side, there's more precocity than you realize, and there's a lot more success on dirt than you realize. The fact this one's debuting on dirt gives me a lot more confidence, even though it's an Oscar Performance. And listen, we know Oscar Performance does it really well on the grass, obviously. But you look at the dirt sprint numbers, very, very solid, 16%, and always does respectable first time out with his starters. So that was a horse at 8-1 that I thought was a little bit interesting in this race. Well, let's dive into the stakes portion of the card, and we'll go to the grade 3, Pocahontas, for your 2-year-old fillies. And this is a Kentucky Oaks points race. First one of the season. The road to the Kentucky Oaks is starting on Saturday. And I am all the way against the favorite in this race, our Dazzling Dame, for trainer Brittany Russell. I don't like this horse at all. First, Brittany has never had success at Churchill. And when I say never, that is actually what I mean. She's never won a race at Churchill Downs. Broke its maiden going 5.5, and pretty pedestrian 5.5 fractions at that, at Laurel Park against State Bred Company. Okay, fine. then steps up and beats Open Company at the sorority at Monmouth Park, but goes so slow doing it. Gets up to the front, goes 24 flat, 48 and 3, 114 and 1. Woof. You are going so slow up front in that race. I just don't like this horse because I think you have a horse like the number 7, Embrace the Moment, who I'll get to in a second, who's going to apply a lot of early pressure speed to that horse's outside. I would much rather take Kenny's horse, Our Two Girls, at 6-1. And by the way, I should say, I think the morning line on this race is so far off, it's not even funny. Our Two Girls, I would not be shocked if this horse goes off as the favorite, is working out like an absolute monster. If you saw Kevin Kilroy's tweet that he put up the other day, this one was absolutely dominating another McPeak horse, Prowess, in the gallop out. And the rider for Prowess was asking, and the rider for Our Two Girls was literally standing up in the saddle trying to pull this horse up, and the horse was still blowing by. This one I think is pretty serious. And 6-1, my colleague Kaylee Shapiro pointed this out. Caravaggio filly that goes for $165,000 after everybody knows Caravaggio is going over to Japan. There's something there with this horse. Windstar bred. I just think this one makes a lot of sense at 6-1. I love Our Two Girls in this particular spot for McPeak. McPeak always does well with his fillies, and $165,000 for McPeak's fillies. That's a little bit more than you're used to seeing him train. I mean, he gets, remember, Torpedo Anna, Horse of the Year, $40,000. He gets a lot of bargain basement runners. One of those is Taken by the Wind, the number 3 horse, who I really like as for Rock Your World. I like Rock Your World as a sire. I think he's going to be really effective. I rads up. Maybe that's why the morning line's 5-1, but I don't see how you can make that horse 5-1 coming out of a maiden optional claimer in an off-turf race at Saratoga over Our Two Girls, who won against Maiden Special Weight Company at Ellis Park in a race intended for the dirt. I just don't see how that's possible. So I like Our Two Girls quite a bit as my top choice. I think Miss Complicated, obviously, is a horse you want to include. Had all sorts of trouble last time out, but it's still a maiden and would have to break her maiden against some pretty solid competition. In terms of value, I don't have a huge price here, but Embrace the Moment for Greg Compton, Jamie Rodriguez. I think this is a nice horse. Again, this is a horse whose morning line I think is way off. 5-1 would not shock me at all if this horse goes off as a favorite. And I say that because a horse has the best last out buyer speed figure, ran a 69 in debut. I don't see how Dazzling Dame is the favorite here other than you go, well, she won a stakes race. Okay, but I mean, there's got to be some qualifications here. Embrace the Moment is sired by Yopon. We like these Yopons quite a bit. Like the workouts leading up to that debut. The debut was very professional at Delaware Park, ran really strong fractions up on the front end. And I just thought, like I said, made a lot of sense here in terms of Embrace the Moment. So I think that's one, if I'm playing a late pick 5 or any sort of a pick 5 sequence, I guess you can't play a late pick 5 here. You play the pick 6, 2-7, or I'm sorry, 5-7. That's kind of how I'm going. Maybe you throw in the 2 as well. But I'm completely tossing Dazzling Dame. I like Taken by the Wind, but not as a win contender. Same thing true for Starlit Sky. So I'm excited to see this addition to the Pocahontas and see where these fillies go. But for me, it's going to be Kenny McPeak's Our Two Girls as my top choice. Now let's go to the Locust Grove, and an interesting race. It is a nice stakes race. Even though it's a 6-horse field, I think you can make the case for a few different horses. Your morning line favorite is the number 3 Royal Spa. And I like this horse quite a bit. Certainly got the job done a few back, going a mile and a 16th in the Shawnee at Churchill Downs. But outside of that, I do tend to think Royal Spa is a better horse going shorter. And while, again, that Shawnee got the job done going long and actually came from off the pace and pretty far off the pace that day at a big price, had Flavian Pratt aboard. Now we get Tyler Gaffleone. Rudy Brissett, only 1 for 11 graded stake dirt route races at Churchill Downs over the last 5 years. As a result, I'm going to go to the second choice, number 2, Alpine Princess at 2-1 for trainer Brad Cox. This one won a stakes race 2 back at Horseshoe, Indianapolis, earned a 95 buyer speed figure that day with Loan Machado in the irons. Now, did get Lasix, but has won with out Lasix plenty in her career and run some really big races. Won the Remington Park Oaks with a 96 buyer speed figure last year. And so won the Untappable a few years ago over West Omaha, Sistine Chapel, and others down at Fairgrounds going a mile and 70. So by no stretch does this horse need Lasix to win. Was disappointing last time out in the Groupie Doll. No two ways about it at Ellis Park going a mile. Again, that configuration isn't always the easiest. It was breaking from the inside rail. I didn't think got away as well as probably Tyler Gaffleone had wanted to that day. And now Irad Ortiz Jr. is up on the mount. That's going to be a positive for me. I like Alpine Princess in this spot. I think she gets the job done for Cox. I think she sits a little closer to the pace and puts in that run, gets kind of first run at the leaders at the top of the stretch. So I like this one as my top choice. Now, in terms of a value play, there's not a ton of value in a 6-horse race. I do think a horse like Regaled is a really nice horse for Whit Beckman. Those last 3 races are absolutely good enough to be included in exactas and trifectas. Second by a head in the Groupie Doll, third by 4 in the DuPont at Pimlico, and then second by a neck 2 Royal Spa in the Heavenly Cause over a wet track. So again, a horse that's relatively new to Beckman's barn, but one that ran really well for him last time out in that Groupie Doll. That was the first time out in the barn, and has come back and gotten in a couple of works since then. I just think this horse makes a lot of sense. JD Ramos stays up after riding this one last time out, has the ability to come from well off the pace, is obviously going to want a little bit more speed to run into. I do think the good news is really showed the type of trip this one's probably going to sit last time out. Relatively short field, same size. The Groupie Doll was only 7 and sat, 2-3 lengths off the pace. I think that's exactly where Regaled is going to be again with Ramos aboard. And again, a horse that if you're playing it horizontally, I'd probably throw into my ticket, and vertically certainly more than fits in this field in terms of a horse that could pick up some pieces coming for home. Well, let's go to race number 8 on the card, which is the Iroquois Stakes. And this is going to be a lot of fun talking about the Kentucky Derby and the first Kentucky Derby prep race of the year. And a lot of people might look at this as a 2-horse race between Comport and Spice Runner. I like Comport of the 2. Spice Runner is a very, very nice horse for Steve Asmussen, full sibling to Gunite. Here's the thing. Gunite, 0 for 3 in his career going a mile. Here's another thing. Steve Asmussen, 0 for 20 over the last 5 years in 2-year-old stakes races going long at a mile or longer. So I'm going to be fading Spice Runner at 7-2. A very nice horse, but I like Comport for Eddie Keneally at 6-5. Not a huge pedigree, sired by Collected out of a flattered mare. But you're talking about a sire who stands for $10,000 and the horse sold for $135,000 as a yearling. So a nice physical runner. Keneally knows how to get these ones ready, and won the juvenile last time out over Spice Runner at 7 furlongs and kind of took over after stalking the pace. I don't know how this is going to be different going a little bit longer. I'm not sure how Spice Runner is going to suddenly get better stamina and Comport is going to somehow not like going a little bit longer, especially at a 1-turn configuration. Horse has very good early speed, draws to the outside. I think Comport looks really, really tough in this spot and is ultimately my top pick. A horse that has never taken a step back in his buyer speed figure, 63, 77, 80. I don't think we've seen the best of Comport yet. I will say there are some interesting bigger prices. Horse like Vost, as well as 9-Ball, I think are both really interesting. If you think the pace gets a little too hot up front or they're not going to like the mile distance, I think those 2 horses both could make a little bit of sense stretching out to a mile and coming from off the pace. So those are 2 to consider. But ultimately, my value play is the number 1, Nothing Personal, another Greg Compton runner with Jamie Rodriguez aboard. And this one just ran a hole in the wind at Colonial. Debuted, sired by Violence, always a good first out sire. It's $270,000 at the OBS sale. And, showed a lot of professionalism, tracked the pace, kind of sat mid-pack, and then just blew everybody away and won by nearly 9 lengths over the horse Antrax. Antrax comes back to win next time out and improve his speed figure 10 points. So that's very promising for the 76 buyer that was assigned to Nothing Personal in that debut. 8-1 on the morning line. I think Greg Compton's got him a runner. I would have potentially picked this horse up top if not for that inside rail. Oh, that inside post position coming out of the chute, I do not like it at all. That's the biggest knock I have on this horse. But if that horse can get out of that chute in a good position, in good order, and doesn't need to be in the lead, but is kind of sitting there, maybe in a pocket trip, man, I think this horse could run a really big race on Saturday. I like Nothing Personal. I actually like this one more than Spice Runner, believe it or not. Let's go to race number 9 on the card, the Open Mind Stakes. And we have a field of 6. But interesting race. And, I look at Positano Sunset, who's your favorite. I just always have a hard time trusting Positano Sunset. I know this is a grade 1 winner and, ran so well in that Madison. Also looks a little bit like an anomaly. Did win a $50,000 handicap leading up to that race. But I mean, you're talking about a pretty big jump from winning a grade 1 to winning a $50,000 handicap. Last time out in the Derby City Distaff, you may be able to draw a line through that because it was over a wet track and she had never really dealt with a wet track before. Though she's sired by Golden Sense, you'd assume she'd like a wet track. But nevertheless, Positano Sunset only 1 for 8 winning at at Churchill Downs. Does like the distance, but I do worry about that running style with her and coming from off the pace. She wins in bunches when she does win, but then she'll go on these long stretches where she doesn't win for a while. So, if you go back to 2023, she won a couple of races, including the Audubon Oaks, and then she just kind of wandered. Wasn't able to get the win for a while until that $50,000 handicap nearly 2 years later at Tampa, and then backs it up with a win in the Madison. Now is back on a losing streak. So I do worry about that a little bit with her. As a result, I really like the number 6 Impel for trainer Brad Cox. Florent Giroux up on the mount. This one won the Groupie Doll over the aforementioned Regaled and Alpine Princess, who are running in the Locust Grove. But I think Impel's a real nice horse who likes to come from a little further off the pace, but has good speed and is able to be guided into tactical positions. I know a horse is not tactical, but the horse can be positioned tactically. And Juddmonte owned and bred, a horse that, again, I think maybe the light went on a little bit in that Groupie Doll, ran a really nice race, 88 buyer speed figure. I think going, the 6.5 furlongs is going to be a good spot for her. Did win at a mile last time out, but like I said, likes to come from off the pace, draws the outside, and I just think is going to sit the right sort of chip with Giroux aboard. So I really like Impel in this spot. I think at 5-2, that's a very fair price for a horse that has been on a little bit of a win streak now, and more importantly, showed the ability to win off of Lasix, which is what she did last time out. So that was always, I think, really impressive. Actually ran her best figure, or almost her best figure, off of Lasix. So again, something that I take pretty seriously there. And again, I just think 6.5 is the right distance for her, and drawing to the outside is going to help. Now, in terms of a value, number 5, Minx Palace. For Eddie Keneally, Louis Saya is up on the mount. The horse was probably a little outclassed in the Chicago against Vava and Zetlos and horses like that. I just think this horse probably is more of an underneath play, to be fair. But this is one who won the Roxalana overnight back in April, has success at Churchill, 4 for 8, winning at Churchill Downs, 6 for 8, hitting the board at Churchill Downs, has won at this distance. The only other time at this distance was a second place finish. So there are plenty of things to like about Minx Palace at a pretty big price in a relatively short field. The horse needs to get a little bit faster, but you go and look at there's a couple of races this horse can run back to that are going to be fast enough to win this race, including that Roxalana, potentially with the 85 buyer. And she ran an optional claimer with a 90, and that's probably closer to what she needs. But I love the workouts that Eddie's been giving her. 47 flat work, going 4 furlongs at Keeneland, which was a bullet that day. I think this one's ready to go and might actually show a little bit more speed early in the race. So that's where I went as my value play. Now let's head to the Louisville Thoroughbred Society. And this is a great race. It's a really good race for a listed stakes race, $300,000 listed stakes race. I like this race a lot. Look at a few horses. Bentornado. I love Bentornado, and I'm still sick to my stomach over Bentornado. I was telling everybody who had 2 ears last year that I loved Bentornado in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I said the only horse this horse had lost to going one turn was Forever Young and Bookham Dano, because the race at Charlestown, that 7 furlongs, is a 2-turn race. The only horses this horse has ever lost to going around 1 turn is Forever Young, hello, and Bookham Dano, hello. Pretty good company. All right, that's it. That's the list of horses he's lost to going around 1 turn. And coming from home in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, I thought, my God, I'm a genius, 28-1. I have this thing home. And then something happened that had never happened before in a horse's career, and that is Straight No Chaser passed someone. Straight No Chaser never passed a single horse in his career until he decided to pass Bentornado that day. Devastating. Anyway, that was a bad beat. Irad Ortiz Jr. is back up for Jose D'Angelo. I really like this horse. I really like Jose a lot too. And I really like Irad riding this horse. But it's been a long layoff. Horse hasn't run since last November. This is clearly to get this horse tuned up and ready, maybe for a Breeders' Cup run. We'll see. But Bentornado, super talented horse, but I'm going to try to play against him. You look at a horse like Nash. That figure 2 back looks like a little bit of an anomaly. I think we can all agree. A horse like Skelly, I've never loved. A horse always feels like a little bit more of an Oaklawn product. And you get that horse outside of Oaklawn, just not quite the same. Only 1 for 5 winning at Churchill Downs. So again, a horse, I'll let that horse try to, beat me. As a result, I went to a horse I'm not even necessarily thrilled with, but he was my top pick, and I think he's going to be the most likely winner. And that's the number 1 world record, a horse that when he runs his A race is absolutely good enough to win this. Breaking from the inside rail is a little bit of a concern, but won the Grade 2 Amsterdam from the inside rail as well, and actually broke its maiden from the inside rail. So has some experience coming out of the rail at Churchill Downs too. Likes Churchill, never missed the board there with 2 victories, 5 for 6 at this distance with 2 wins. Gets Tyler Gaffleone up, who's taking over for Flavian Pratt, who's up in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday. I always like this horse for Rudy. Rudy, I always like with dirt sprinters. I just think this one makes a fair amount of sense. A horse that can pass other horses, but has excellent early speed, and is probably going to be pretty aggressive early coming out of the gate from that inside rail, but then could sit a pocket trip if Skelly decides to try to blaze to the front and cross and clear. So Tyler's got a couple of options there. I like world record at 4-1, but I'll be honest, the horse I really love in this race is Little Knee. I freaking love Little Knee, and I have no idea why Little Knee is 12-1. First of all, the horse has never been on Lasix, so this running against stakes competition is not an issue. This is a horse that almost beat Bookham Dano in that Jersey Shore last year. Then gets transferred from Eddie Owens Jr. to Mark Casse. The horse runs an absolute clunker in the H. Allen Jerkins. All right. Then goes to the turf and runs at Belmont at the Big A, going 6 furlongs on the turf, and finishes 4th that day. Not terrible, but it's not a turf horse. Goes to the bench for a long time, comes back from a pretty long layoff from October to July over a wet track, runs a really close second to Concrete Glory, beats a horse like Scotland, and runs a 95 buyer speed figure against $100,000 optional claimers. Then steps up last time out and absolutely dominates a field with Surveillance and Damon's Mound and wins that race easily. Now is going up against stakes competition. But here's the nice part. Little Knee's never been on Lasix, so you don't have to worry about whether or not Little Knee can switch off Lasix. He's run well before. He ran well against Listed Stakes Company before. Casse is a trainer who's had a nice summer. Jose Ortiz up on the mount. This one is firing bullets coming into this race, 47 flat, first of 148. I will say that again, first of 148 on September 6th. I think Little Knee at 12-1 is a real threat. I like this horse. Now, there's a lot of speed in this race, so maybe you want to look at a horse like Durante or maybe even like a bomb like Banjo Chris, who's going to come running late. But I think Little Knee's a horse that's got a little bit of flexibility and versatility, doesn't need to get to the lead, draws a little further outside. I just think makes a lot of sense in this spot. I 12-1. I'll take that price on Little Knee all day. All right. Well, let's close it out with the last race on the card, which is a $120,000 maiden special weight for 3-year-olds and up, going 6 furlongs on the dirt. Interesting field. I was very interested to see Chad Brown has a complexity that is actually debuting for Klarovich Stables at Churchill Downs. And I had to dig into this. Number 7 Nuance, 9-2 in the morning line. Chad Brown over the last 5 years, 1 for 16 with 3-year-old and up horses making their debuts on the dirt at Churchill Downs. Not exactly a spot that invokes a ton of confidence. What's interesting to me about this race is you can make a case for maybe you look at a horse like Barker, the number 2 at 6-1 for Chris Davis, getting on dirt for the first time, ran a bullet leading up to its debut, but debuted at Kentucky Downs, now switching to the dirt. I'm not 100% sure. I don't always love that angle. You look at a horse like Hitchcock for Peter Urton, making its 3rd start. Last time out was second to Verifier. Very, nice horse. Went on to win a stakes race in his next start, or just last time out, and won 3 in a row to start its career. But here's the thing about Hitchcock. Horse can't stay on the track. Debuted as a 2-year-old back in September 2024, then wasn't seen until March 2025, and now hasn't been seen until September 2025. So I just worry about this horse and whether or not this horse can string races together. It just makes me a little concerned for the effort on Saturday. As a result, I really like the number 12 Good Mojo at 5-1 for Grant Forster. Edgar Morales up. This one's getting back on the right surface. Was on the turf last time. Actually ran halfway decent, but was no match for Operation Sunrise, who actually won its next start against a $200,000 allowance company at Kentucky Downs. But you look at Good Mojo, this is one who ran against a couple of nice horses the first 2 times out, once at Churchill, once at Ellis Park, finished 3rd both those times. Interestingly enough, the runner-up came back to win both of those races. This one also nice workout pattern with a 47-3 bullet work on September 3rd. This one's feeling pretty good, getting back on the right surface, like I said, and has been running against good competition. Lost to a turf sprinter who wins next time out. And then the 2 third-place finishes, you have 2 horses that have come to win next time out, coming out of those races as well. So, again, Good Mojo at 5-1, drawing to the outside. I think nice little horse by Motown that I think is, like I said, already has made well more than the $3,500 sales price, but I think is sitting on a pretty nice effort there with Edgar Morales up. Now, horse that I'm interested in at a price. I wanted to like the number 8 Crazy Diamond because I love Omaha Beach. But I'm not sure about the work pattern with that horse. The 103 and 1 gate work leading up to that is a little concerning. Maybe the horse doesn't have enough gate speed, although there's some nice workouts buried in there. You can find him the 48-4, the 47-4. So Crazy Diamond at 15-1 for Dallas Stewart. Always like Dallas, like Omaha Beach. That might be one. But I ultimately landed on a 12-1 runner and Fuego for Rusty Arnold. Louis Saez up. Sired by Nyquist, $400,000 purchase. Now, out of a turf mare, to be clear, a grade 1 winning turf sprinter in terms of Belvoir Bay. But the interesting part is if you look under siblings, you might not get a lot of information. But there is one sibling, Uafik Allah, who was sired by Medaglia d'Oro and was, if I'm not mistaken, the first foal for this mare. And this horse went over to the Middle East, won in debut, and won second time out. So that gives me a lot of confidence that maybe there is some more precocity in this family than you realize. Nyquist, of course, is always dynamite first time out and is always good in these sorts of conditions and in terms of, a dirt sprint and that sort of thing. So Nyquist, they're always going to be pretty flashy. Rusty knows how to get him ready first time out if he needs to, if he has a good one. This one's had some nice workouts as well. I do, again, The 5 furlong works don't overwhelm me, but there's enough decent ones back there in August that I kind of like it. 12-1 on the morning line, I think, is more than a fair price in a race that I feel is wide open. This is one I would absolutely include in my late pick 5 sequence. And Fuego at 12-1 might just light up the board and light some tickets on fire if you don't have them. So that's going to be where I go with my selections at Churchill Downs on Saturday. I appreciate everybody tuning into this episode of Capping the Card. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.